Good morning everyone. Welcome to my channel, the Biologykey. Today, the topic which we'll be discussing is the kingdom plantae. But before that, let us take an overview about the living organism and its classification. Basically, the living organisms are classified into 5 kingdoms. This classification was done by Robert Whittaker in 1959. Let me just write it over here. By Robert Whittaker. Which year? 1959. He divided the living organism into 2, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. A complete difference between the prokaryotes and the eukaryote has already been uploaded by me in my previous video. You all can just check it out. The living organisms, the prokaryotes, the kingdom which comes under the prokaryotes are the kingdom Monera. A very common example of this Monera is nothing but the bacteria. It lacks cell organelles. As I've told you, prokaryotes do not have cell organelles like mitochondria, Golgi bodies. They do not have all these things. Only the thing which they have are the 70S ribosome and naked DNA. What do you mean by naked DNA? Naked DNA is nothing but, as we all know, that the DNA is present inside the nucleus and this nucleus is covered by a nucleolus. But this is not the case in the prokaryote. That is why it is said that it is not having any covering, therefore it is a naked DNA. And which type of ribosome is present? 70S ribosome. The very distinguished feature of this Monera, that is bacteria, is that it is having flagella as well as cilia. Flagella is a thread-like structure which is present behind the bacteria. Now this is the most important use of this flagella is that for the locomotion. Locomotion means for the movement of the bacteria. And they also have small cilia present. Again, the role of the cilia is for the locomotion. Asexual reproduction takes place in Monera. It can be binary fission or budding. Binary fission is that from one single cell 2 are formed, and then from 2, suppose this is a one single cell, from that 2 cells are formed, and from this again they divide to form 4 like this, and this cycle of multiplication goes on. Then comes the eukaryotes. Eukaryotes, as I've told, they are both type. It can be unicellular as well as multicellular. In unicellular, the kingdom which comes under is the protista. This protista organelle is the most important thing to remember is that they forms most of the time a colony. Colony means they will find in a cluster everywhere. Easiest example of this is amoeba and paramecium. Then comes the multicellular organism. Multicellular organisms are further divided into 2 heads. First one is with cell wall, the second one is without cell wall. We already studied the difference between plant cell and animal cell. With cell wall includes autotrophs, and these autotrophs are nothing but the plantae. Whereas with cell wall also have the second kingdom, which is the fungus. Without cell wall includes the animalia. Animalia includes all the animals present. Plantae are further divided into 2, cryptogam and phanerogam. So let us start with the kingdom plantae in much more detail. Kingdom plantae. This was classified by Eckler, a botanist, in 1883. The classification was based on the external features. External features are nothing but when just by looking at the plants and trees we can say that this is from so and so classification. This is from cryptogam or this is from phanerogam. The different external features based on which it is classified are the presence or absence of organs. Some plants do have reproductive organs, some do not. Then the presence or absence of separate conducting tissue for conduction of water and food. There are few plants whose leaves and stem itself just absorb the water and nutrition from the surrounding, but this is not the case in higher plants. They do have a specific conducting tissue by which they absorbs water and transport minerals in different parts of the plants. The conductive tissue are nothing but the xylem and phloem, which we'll be studying in detail further. Another thing based on which it was classified was the presence of seeds. There are plants which do not have seeds and few do have it. And if they have seeds, whether the seeds are enclosed. Enclosed means whether it is having an outer covering or it is simply present. So these are few things based on which the classification was done. So let us see the two types of classification of the kingdom Plantae. The first one is the cryptogam and the second one is the phanerogam. Cryptogam are nothing but plants that reproduce by spores. What are spores? See, some plants have spore-like structures, or you can say an organ like this, which consists of many spores. This organ is called as sporophyte. This organ is called as sporangium. Now this sporangium, when we break it, or it is breaked due to some environmental effect or something, the spores are released, and these spores are then responsible for the reproduction in cryptogams. The second thing which you need to remember is that these plants are called as non-seed bearing plants. This cryptogam are further divided into three. The first one is the Thylophyta, second is Bryophyte, and the third one is Pteridophyta. We'll be studying it in detail further. Phanerogam, seed bearing plants. These are mostly advanced plant. This is further classified into two types, which is the gymnosperm and the second one is the angiosperm. Angiosperm are again divided into two, which are the dicotyledonous and the monocotyledonous. So let us study each and every term in detail. So let's start with the types of cryptogams. The first type is the Thylophyta. This Thylophyta mostly grow in water, or almost grow in water. Water can be fresh water as well as saline water. So it can be found in pond as well as in sea water. So both the type of water is found. So they are found basically in saline water as well as in fresh water. What do you mean by saline water? Saline water is nothing but the salty water, and fresh water is the sweet water which we know. Then they can be unicellular as well as multicellular. Unicellular or multicellular. They can be minute as well as few are large as well. The fourth thing which you need to remember is the body is soft and fiber like. Fiber like, you must be knowing the thread like structure. They are very tiny and thread like, just like our thread is, the same way is the Thylophyta. Soft means it is very soft, not at all rough when you touch it or feel it. A very good example of Thylophyta is algae. Algae are of three types again. The first one is the blue-green algae, second one is the brown, and the third one is the red. The first one is the blue-green algae. This blue-green algae consists of chlorophyll and it is mostly present in a moist place, a watery place. The second one is the brown algae. Brown algae are found near the seashore. Wherever the sea is there, near the shore, you will find this, and it is also called as the seaweed algae. The third one is the red algae. This is found deep inside the oceans. So one more thing which you need to remember is they do not have any sort of root, stem, leaves, but they do have chlorophyll. So due to the presence of chlorophyll, they are called as autotrophs, as they can prepare their own food. The examples of Thylophyta are, the first example which you can always write is the Spirogyra. Second is Ulva, and some types of yeast are also included in this Thylophyta. So few yeast and molds are included in the Thylophyta. The second type of cryptogams are the Bryophyta. Bryophyta are also called as amphibians. Now, why they are called as amphibians? The reason behind is that this Bryophyta mostly grow in a moist place, in a soil, moist soil. Moist soil means which is slightly wet in nature, but they reproduce in the water. Just like amphibians, for example, frog, because frog can live in water as well as on land. The second thing which you need to remember over here in bryophytes are, they are thyloid. Thyloid is nothing but they do not have proper root, stem, leaves. They do not have complete organs in them, but still they have leaf-like structure, root-like rhizome. Instead of root, they have rhizomes in them. So these are few things which you need to remember in bryophytes. Then the third thing which is you need to know is that it is multicellular. It is not at all unicellular. Only one type of species are found here which are multicellular in nature. They are autotrophs mostly, as they have chlorophyll in them. So next is, they are non-vascular. Non-vascular means they do not have xylem and phloem. So when they require nutrition from the surrounding, or when they require water, what happens is, if they are having leaf-like structure, which is not exactly leaf, but it is a leaf-like structure, so what happens is the surface of the leaf itself absorbs water from the surrounding. They do not have xylem and phloem, but still they absorb. So such structure, such kind of process is non-vascular process. So this is a characteristic feature of bryophytes. Then the examples of bryophytes is Markensia. This bryophytes, as I have told, it comes under cryptogams. They do not have recognizable reproductive system. So what they mainly have is a spore. Suppose this is a sporangium. Sporangium is a covering which consists of the spore. So this sporangium have a spore. It has only a single spore, not more than one, and this spore helps in the reproduction. When this sporangium breaks, the spore is easily released and it can go in the environment, in the soil, and reproduce in a new plant. So this is all about the bryophytes. The next one is the pteridophyta. This group has developed root, stem, and leaves. The second thing which you need to know is they are vascular. Vascular means they have xylem as well as phloem, which means, suppose this is the plant. So the xylem, this blue color I am showing as a xylem, this will absorb water from the soil and it will transport it to the leaves. And yellow color, blue and black I am showing, phloem I will be showing with black. The next thing is, here what happens, the photosynthesis takes place and the And due to this photosynthesis, what we get? We get glucose, or in other words, we get food. This food, which is prepared by the leaves, then is transported to different parts of the plant, with whether it is root, then stem, then flower, everywhere. So these are the two things which you need to know. The xylem transports water, whereas the phloem transport food to different parts of the plant. Then the third thing is, though they have root, stem and leaves and the vascular system is proper, but still what they do not have is flowers and fruit, and they are not having fruit, so they do not have seed as well. They reproduce both sexually and asexually. Most probably they have spores formed along the back of the posterior surface of their leaves. If this is a leaf, so in the posterior part of the leaves there will be spores formed. So the back of the leaf, back is nothing but the posterior. The shining part is the front part, and if you turn the leaf, the posterior part, you will find the spores. So the third thing which I told you just now is absence of flower and fruit, then spores are formed in the posterior of the leaf. Then, as I've told you, they reproduce sexually as well as asexually. Asexually means with the help of spores. Spores means again in the sporangium they will be having spores. Now these spores are not one as it is there in the bryophytes. In pteridophyte the spores are many, and when they burst out or when they dehiscent, what happens is these spores are released and it is spread. What about the sexual reproduction? In this case what happens is, if this is the gametophyte with the rhizome, this is the rhizome, or you can say rhizoid. So these young gametophyte consist of two organs, which are male reproductive organ and female reproductive organ. The male reproductive part in the plant is called as antheridium, whereas the female part is called as the archegonium. Now these two parts, the archegonium releases an egg, whereas the antheridium releases a sperm. When these two fuses, they gives zygote, and due to the formation of zygote a new plant is developed. This was all about the sexual reproduction. The most common example of pteridophytes are equisetum, Selaginella, etc. So this was all about the pteridophyta. So this was all about the pteridophyta, which comes under the cryptogam. Then comes the phanerogam. Phanerogam are divided into two divisions. The first one is the gymnosperm and the second one is the angiosperm. First we'll be studying about the gymnosperm. Gymnosperms are mostly called as evergreen plants. These are evergreen plants. Evergreen means they are evergreen all the time. The second thing is they are perennial, which means they grow more than 2 years, or you can say they survive more than 2 years. Their stems are without any branches. If suppose this is the tree of any angiosperm, this is the bark of that tree. So you will not find any other branches coming out from this type of angiosperm. From this type of species, there will be only one branch, or you can say there will be only one bark, and from this one bark you will find the leaves are coming out. The leaves which are forming are only on the top of the bark, and this place what happens is you will see a crown like structure. This forms a crown of leaves, no branch. They are vascular as well. The female and male reproductive flowers are present in a different parts but of the same plant. Suppose here you will find a male part of the plant, and here you will find a female part. You will find a male reproductive flower in different sporophyll, whereas the female reproductive flower in different sporophyll. So we'll just write it. Gymnosperms have seeds, but the seeds which they have do not have a outer covering. Outer covering of seed is absent. Therefore, the name itself suggests. Angio means naked, and sporus means seed. They have naked seed. A very common example of gymnosperms are cycas, pinus, etc. This was all about the gymnosperm. Now we will be studying about angiosperm. Angiosperm are further divided into two parts: dicotyledonous plants. The second one is the monocotyledon. The monocotyledonous plants. The name itself of the angiosperm suggests angio, which means covered, and sperm means seed. So the covered seed, those plants whose seeds are covered are called as angiosperm. Angiosperms are flowering plants. The one which flowers. In our surrounding, we mostly see the flowering plants, which are nothing but the angiosperm. They are very tall, greater in height. Some are small and still they flower, so they also comes under the angiosperm. The second thing which you need to remember is this: the angiosperms are seed bearing. They have seeds, and what kind of seeds? Covered seeds. They have covered seeds. This makes the difference between the angiosperm and gymnosperm, as gymnosperm have naked seeds which do not have covering, whereas angiosperms have seeds which has a covering also. They are sexually reproduce. The angiosperms are sexually reproduce, which means in this flower you will find male as well as female reproductive part. If you have seen the hibiscus, that is the most common example which you have studied in 7th or 8th standard, the parts of hibiscus. In that you must have noticed the anther, style, stigma, ovaries, all these things were present in a single flower. So that is again an example of angiosperm. Now let us see what is dicotyledonous plants and monocotyledonous plants. If you see the seed of dicotyledon, they are having 2 cotyledon. Whereas if you see the monocotyledon, it is having a single cotyledon. Example, if you take rice as an example of monocot, if you soak the rice in the water for 2 to 3 hours, the same thing you do with the dicotyledonous plant. You take a red grams, or you also call it as chana in Hindi. After soaking, you try to press it. If you press the chana, you will see that it will equally divide itself and it will form 2 cotyledon. Whereas if you see the rice and you press it, it will not be able to divide into 2 equal parts. It will be as it is. Therefore, it is called as single cotyledonous. The second thing, if you see, dicotyledonous plants are mostly taproot. Taproot means they will have a broad primary root, and from that the secondary root and tertiary root will come. Whereas if you see the monocotyledonous, they are mostly fibrous root. Fibrous roots are nothing but which looks like fibers, and they are spread all over. They do not have a strong root system. It is fragile and fibrous in nature. The third thing which you need to remember in dicotyledonous plants are the stems are very strong. Stems are strong, whereas in monocotyledonous plants the stems are hollow. They have hole in between the stem. Fourth thing, if you see the leaves are mostly reticulate. Reticulate venation is nothing but, if you see the leaf of a dicotyledonous plant, the leaves have this kind of venations. This venation is nothing but reticulate venation. But if you see the monocotyledonous plant, the venation over here is parallel. Parallel venation is nothing but the veins are parallel in nature. You see, this is the leaves, the venations are like this. So these are parallel venation, and this venation is only seen in monocotyledonous plant. Dicotyledonous plants, looking at the flower also you can observe and say this is dicotyledonous plants, because the petals which you see are mostly 4 or 5 in a flower. Whereas in monocotyledonous plant it is 3 or multiple of 3. If this is a flower, it will have 5 petals or just 4 petals. But if you see a monocotyledonous plant, it will be 3 petaled. The flowers will be 3 petaled or multiple of 3. So this is how you can identify which plant is monocotyledonous plant and which one is dicotyledonous plant. So this was all about the phanerogram, and under the phanerogram we just now studied the gymnosperm and angiosperm. Thank you. If you have liked my video and understood, just subscribe me and you will be getting updates about my recent videos which I'll be uploading soon.